Hello, good morning or afternoon, wherever you are, or evening. I don't know where you're coming from. Can you hear me? Yay, it's working. Everything is working. Amazing. So welcome to my actually first live or stream coding, whatever you want to call it. And that's my first time on this StackStream platform, which is in beta. It's fairly new, and I hope you'll enjoy both the platform and my coding. So we have a few people here. Today I'm going to live code a feature on a project I'm working on with my team. It's called Vivid. It's a web components UI library. A bit of a background on that. Like in 2018, I went to Warsaw to the first Confront.js conference, and I gave a talk about the front-end TDD challenge. Many people don't really believe in unit testing in front-end, and TDD. Sometimes people, not many people do TDD, so unit testing and TDD in front-end is a bit awkward to some people, but for me it's like life-changing technique. So this is my talk from 2018. I'll send you the slides afterwards, or you can look it up, just the front-end TDD challenge on YouTube, probably find me. And fast forward a few years, I joined the team that developed, still develops, this UI component library based on web components, no framework at all. But this library is being used in almost every framework that exists. Okay, we integrate into Angular, React, Vue, Svelte, and several others that probably people didn't hear of. Yeah, and in about a week and a half, I'm going to speak about more test-driven experience in Confront.js of this year. I'm happy to say that I didn't miss any Confront.js so far, and it's a great experience. And if you're going to be there, or if you want to be there, we can hook up and meet, and that would be great. So if you have any questions, you have a chat. Most of you already found it, so you can ask there. I'll try to look at both screens and see if someone asked anything. And let's start coding. What can go wrong? Okay, so this is Vivid. Let's actually show you the real Vivid. So this is Vivid. This is our documentation, and you can see, we already see that we have a lot of components. I can check them out, but we're going to work on this one today. Just found an issue that might fit live coding. And this is a grid. And as you can see, it's not such a powerful grid. We don't really have sorting or filtering. It's just, you can see this lab thingy icon. It means this is an experimental and under development component. And we're going to add some new feature to the grid today. Okay, Stefan says, okay. Yeah, but right now I'm going to do like live coding here, so I don't think I need video at the moment. Yeah. Okay. So this is Vivid. And as an open source project, you'd usually want to look for contributing. Almost every open source project has this contributing guide that can walk you through how to start contributing to the project. So I'll just click this one, and there's a guide on how to do all the boring stuff like fork and clone, npm install, and all that stuff. I don't remember if we actually had Okay, I'll walk you through how I do it. And another thing I wanted to say is that's kind of it. Okay. To those of you who just arrived, this is Vivid, UI components library based on web components. Oh, I didn't show you that. So you can see we have custom elements. That's the power of web components. You can actually create native components that have all the things that you're used to from React or Vue or Angular, whatever framework you're using. And you can actually access everything from around here. So they have all the methods and definitions and whatnot. Okay. Hola, Piotr. So any questions before I start to dive into the issue? Cool. So Itamar says that they already have a web components library. You're using Lit. We used Lit in the former version of Vivid. Now we're using, you can call it a framework called Fast, created by Microsoft. So the high-level architecture here is this. So Vivid is an NX project. Okay, by NX project, I mean that we have the apps here. For instance, we have the docs and some end-to-end, which we're not going to dive into. And we have libs. Okay, so we have some shared lib and some NX Vivid integrations, like, let's say we have some generators, executors, especially for creating new components or lint rules, for instance. We have our components, which are all in the same library. We're debating whether to take them out or not, but right now everything is in one place. And yeah, so this is an NX project, which means it's a monorepo. Everything is here. All the utilities and the components, everything is in the same repository. And some of them are separate packages that can be used as if they are coming from third-party vendor. So we have separation. So someone can develop anything without interfering the other. It also helps when you need to test. So if you change anything, then you can test everything with one command. And then you make sure you didn't break anything in all of the, I don't know, we can say the Vivid ecosystem. The documents are okay, the components are okay, utilities are okay. We also have, didn't show, we have tokens and styles, which can break other things if we change them. So everything is tested in one go. So I hope this answers your question. Cool. Yeah, and Vivid is open source. That's the main reason I'm doing that, on Vivid, because I want to actually promote open source, any open source actually. Vivid is just something I'm familiar with right now, but if anyone has any suggestion for a project to live code, I'll be happy to do it. I actually did it a few times, but not live coding though. Okay. So after understanding what Vivid is and kind of how it works, let's go into the issue. Okay, feel free to ask questions and I'll answer as I go. So this issue seems like a pretty simple one. It's not. It's misleading. This issue means we want to create a select API for our data grid. Okay, so if we'll go to, let's say, can go UI, row selection. So if I go here, then I'll have, should load. So I can select a row. Okay, you can probably select that. I don't know if it has yeah, it also has multiple row selection. So that's pretty basic when you meddle with grids, right? You expect to be able to select. Right now, there's no selection. This is just focus. We want to have selection. Selection means that we want to have some flag that tells the component what kind of selection we want. We would like to emit an event that something was selection or that the selection was changed. And eventually we'd like to set up the style. So people will see that the selection was created or the selection was made. The user needs to see some kind of visual confirmation. Let's see another question. Okay. Tally asked if I'm using, for using Vivid, do you need to install all of it or just parts? So you can install only parts. Actually, I can show you in CodePen how it works. Let's see. I hope this one shows it. And yeah. So in this project, CodePen project, I just import the grid and import the button separately, and that's how it works when it comes to tree shaking and stuff like that. If you ask about npm install, then yes, you need to install the whole package, and that's mainly because installing separate packages with different versions might cause namespace collision because web components are set up globally on the window object. Okay. I hope that answers the question. But yeah, you'll need to install the whole package and then import what you need from the package. Actually, there is a more advanced method of doing that, but you can read about it in the documentation. Okay, Itamar says that that's an issue, the fact that you can't import two versions. So we solved it, actually. We allow users to import multiple versions of Vivid because we have Vivid 2 and 3. And during the migration, people wanted to have both at the same time. So we allow users to actually set the namespace or the prefix for the components dynamically. This is kind of beyond the scope of, let's say it's an advanced feature. So this is scoped elements. Okay, if you want to read about it, feel free to go to our documentation, just vivid.dino.dev, and just read the advanced stuff. It's right there. So you can use several versions of the same library and avoid the naming collision. Okay, does that answer your question, Itamar? Yeah, cool. Okay, so let's go back here. So we want to have this row selection flag set up. And row selection flag, I already created an issue for it. So we have none, which means this is the default. You can select. You have single row selection and multiple row selection. And I also added something selection mode change handler, which we might look at later. But right now it's just here as a topic, but there's nothing to do about it right now. And we'll think about it maybe together. So let's see. So I'll go to oh yeah, forgot about this. So in GitHub, they have a really cool feature which enables you to create a branch. It was in GitLab a long time ago, and I really missed that feature in GitHub, but now they have it for a few months already, at least in the non-enterprise version, it's just a few months. So I just create this branch automatically, and I'll check out locally. And a few changes. And now I'm on the right branch. Okay, so let's start by making a few how I start to develop. So the first thing I do is I want to see the components, and what I mean by see the components is I want to run the tests. So we run an NX project. So sorry, npx. So everything we run is NX. Run components test. So it's running with jest, so I don't see anything while I develop. That's my, how do you say, scratch or whatever, my scar or whatever, my oddity. I develop front end without looking at the browser at all. And when I finish everything, if I have to meddle with CSS, then I start looking at the browser at some point. Okay, so the grid. So we want to have a feature of this row selection thing, and we want this to have 3 states, non, single, and multi for the row selection. So I already know what to do, but if you're new to a project, you'll probably want to look at code in other places and see how it works. For instance, let's see if there is something with attribute. I don't remember if there is actually a thing with an attribute. To toggle, generate header. Okay, so all of these are coming from here, but let's say it's a new okay, card. So I'm looking at some other components tests, for instance, and I'm looking at, let's say, element. No, that's not a good one because it has no tested properties. Let's look at something. Okay, breadcrumb might be big. So yeah. Let's see, there's some reflection. Okay. So just looking at banner shows it because it has a reflection property. So reflection means that the property or the property on the object, the element object, is reflected in an attribute and vice versa. So if I set an attribute, then I'll have the property. Let's actually see an example for that. So let's go to the banner. This property is message text. Message text, message text. Okay. So if I'll inspect the element here, banner, and I'll do something like that, or text. Okay, so I see the text here. If I set attribute text something. Okay, so I see the attribute changed and also text changed. If I change the text to something else, it changes both. So that's a reflection. No, hi Noam. Yeah, we're working on an issue to add the select feature to the data grid. Okay, let's show the grid again. Data grid. So right now there's only focus, and we want to add select row feature. Okay, and what I just showed is that there is a reflection. Let's go back to banner. That the reflection mechanism means that I can set attributes to the let's go back here, set attributes on the element itself, and it should reflect to the property. I'll just do that. I'm changing the attribute and it reflects here, but if I do that, then it reflects both ways. Okay, kind of like two-way data binding if you want, but much more efficient, I think. So so this is reflection, and again, I'm working as if I'm kind of new to this repository. So what I'll do, because I found an example for reflection, I'll just open up the banner and let's look for text. And I see that we have something called attribute. And then it says attribute and something like that. So, okay, so let's go back to our, that's not what I want. That's not what I want. Data grid spec. Yeah. Okay, so I have too many tests, and this is the last one. Okay, so start by describing that one test is, let's say, row selection. And I'll say it should reflect selection mode. Okay, let's see what Git pilot gave us. Selection mode single. Okay, that's not good. but it's a pretty good start. So we have selection mode. Let's say because we're going to have, this is selection mode, which is general. So we probably have single row or something like that. And then what we would expect is to get attribute of selection mode equal single row. But it's going to fail, probably. First of all, we don't have selection mode on our component. So let me just close the others and open up the data grid. So first of all, we'll need to create, selection mode. Wow, that's pretty awesome. Not true, but awesome. So let's call it a string, and it's not initialized. Start with none. This fails. So actually, a better test would be, now that because I used TypeScript and it forced me to initialize it. So the first test should be should set selection mode to or and here I'd expect it worked. So this should pass. And if I delete this, what happened? Oh yeah, now it doesn't work because, yeah. Okay, it doesn't work because of TypeScript, but now we have a test for this. And if we change it, then it will probably fail. So we're good. Okay, so now we want to have this reflection to pass. So we'll go back to our banner. We'll just copy this line. And we'll just add it here. So this is our selection mode. And this will be selection mode. Hopefully this will work. And yeah, okay, so now it passed, and we can safely assume that it's working. So if we want to see that, then we'll run npx nx run docs serve. So this is building the documentation locally. And I promise I'm not going to look at it, but because I want to demonstrate, I will look at it right now and just show you that it's working. Okay. So localhost, and I'll go to data grid. Let's go here. So it has selection mode known. So we can see it. You can see the attribute here. And if we just do selection mode equals anything, changes, and if it goes back to none, so we're cool. Everything's working, and we have a test and a working code. Let's see if I have the chat. Okay. So Itamar asks, why not make a type or something and use it? And Itamar is right. That's probably going to be my refactor. But the thing is with TDD is that you first start with the minimal working code, okay, and then refactor. So now that we have working code, working tested code, we can refactor however we want, and it should keep on working. Okay, this is a very simple case, but imagine that our code is getting bigger and bigger. So let's take Itamar's advice. So I actually don't want to use type. I actually want to use I want to set it as a const, as an exported const, because, and I'll show you why in a second. So we have our grid selection mode, okay, and this is going to be like, sorry, selection mode is going to be of this type, and we're going to have it as none. That's funny. Should work. Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah. So I'll define the type here. Just define a utility here. So yeah, TypeScript is a mess when you do that. So I'll take export type selection node. It's gonna be let's first define some utility, export type. So that's TypeScript issue. Value of Copilot, great. So this will be value of, wow, of like this, but value of this. Okay. This fixes it up for us. And now we have a constant we can use as well as the type. And now we can actually use this constant here. So let's go back to our test, see if it's working. Okay, tests are still passing. We're good. And we're going to do this data. No, it's not single, it's single row. This is going to be a single row. Okay, and we're good. Okay, WebStorm did the auto import for me, and it went well. So actually, I'll probably, sorry, doing it in another screen. Selection mode. Okay. Yeah, you could use an enum. My problem with enums is that it's non-standard as far as I know. So like you'll be creating something that is TypeScripty, and TypeScript will do its magic behind the scenes. So I prefer not to work with enums. But you can do whatever you feel comfortable with. And actually, when I push it as a pull request, the developer who will code review my code might actually tell me to use enums. So I'll just use enums if that happens. Okay, so we have our row selection flag now, and we need a selection change handler, but we don't really know what it's going to do. So let's keep on doing something else before that. So the second thing we want to do is create an event. And because these are web components, it's a simple event like add event listener on the element. So what this issue says that if the flag is single or multi, then only then when you click, you'll get an event. That's the first thing we want to do. Another thing would be to browse with the keyboard and space and enter. Okay, like you do in an Excel sheet, you can browse with the keyboard and hit space or whatever to select. And of course, remember to remove the event listeners if they are not needed. So we'll do all these if time permits. We have like 20 minutes. So let's see how much we can do here. Okay. So now that we're in the grid, so this data grid spec is testing only the grid element. But the moment I want to test an integration between two components, then I'll head over to the index spec, for instance, which tests the whole component with all its parts. So what happens here is that I import index. Okay, and what index does in this project, it just registers that data grid, which means, and registering the data grid means that it registers the grid with the row and the cell. So it's actually the whole working grid that we're going to test now. Okay, back here. So let's describe row selection. And row selection. Okay. So if I look at the other tests in this page, we see that we already have something. We have fire row focused event, which is kind of what we want to do. So I'll just copy that here. And we should fire the, let's say, change or change when selection mode is row, right? I think this should work. Or rather, let's not. Okay, let's start from simple one. Just when row is clicked. I'm jumping ahead. So that's going to be a simple one. So I'm going to create a spy which is a function that when it is called, just gives us the stats about the function. It follows like how many times it was called, with what parameters, etc. And let's say selection changed. Rather, because we're in row, sorry, so we'll do row selection change. Okay, now we're going to set up the rows data. This is like a utility that waits until the whole component renders. And now we're going to look at the row elements. Let's go for row element 1 and dispatch the event of maybe just click, I think. Just click. And we'd expect spy to have been called, which means that the event fires. So now we expect it to fail. It does fail, and it fails for the right reason. We expected it to fire, and it didn't. So now we need to change 2 files, actually, because we want, let's go to, sorry, even 1 file, I think. Oh yeah, the event bubbles. So we need 1 file, sorry. So we'll go to data grid row, because every row will have its own listener. And right. Okay. So this is something that you need to know if you don't know web components. In web components, you have a connected callback. And a connected callback is called whenever the element is inserted back into the DOM. Okay, so probably have a super connected callback because we extend something that already exists. I don't want that. And now we need to set the listener. So we'll have some click, and yeah, let's do some handle click. We'll do it private handle click. So I probably don't know if I want to send the detail. Do I? There's no need for that. And I can remove that. And maybe this solves my issue. What happens? No, still doesn't. So yeah, sorry. I need to do that. I don't want click. I want the other event. How do you call it? Row selection change. Row selection change. Yeah, that works. Okay. Let's see if you have any questions. Yeah, there was nothing happening when we clicked. Actually, there was, but it was a focus event. So if you look at this, I think it's here. Yeah, so I have a few focus-related events right now. So this, that there was no selection API. That's actually the issue I'm handling right now. So index. Okay, so now we actually have a working test for this. And what I usually do when everything is working, I'm looking for a pattern I can refactor. For instance, we can see that we have this pattern. Okay, this repeats itself in all of the tests. So what I can do is go to the topmost one. I just click. There's also a feature like this in VS Code. I'm using WebStorm, but there's an extract method in VS Code, and you just do that. And I don't know, let's call it set rows data. And now I can replace all of these. Sorry. That would be another one. Another one, so I have two. And another one. Okay, and I can replace all of these. And hopefully I did it correctly. Cool. So this is a small refactor, but yeah, I could do it in before each, but it's not needed for everyone, actually. This one doesn't care about it, for instance. But yeah, you're right, Telly. I could put it in the before each. And it would have worked the same. You want to do it? Let's do it. Does it go with the other tests? How do I tell it to ignore it? Exclude and replace all. Let's see if it works. Works the same. Okay. The fact that I don't always use before each as my first go-to is that I want the test to be as clear as possible as to the steps that were taken. Okay, because here it doesn't, if someone looks at the test, so I have to go here to know that there is data in the test. There is data in the grid, and I don't really need it here. So let's say a user reads it as kind of the documentation of the component, and then might assume that this step is also needed for the initialization page step or something like that. So, and it's not. But yeah, the code looks cleaner now, I hope. And we can move on to the next feature. So SelectFires, but we also have, we said that we want to do it only if it's single or multiple. Anyone can suggest how to do that? Yeah, I suggest to wrap everything up in describe. Yeah, it might work, but sometimes the describes are not related. I'd rather use my describes to describe the API itself, like separate them through let's see, like this describes row selection API. Okay, the row focused is not really, so I could actually wrap these as the focus API, row focused API, cell focused API, and so on and so on. And they're not really related to the same describe. in my opinion. But yeah, it might be that the code reviewer might decide differently. So another nice thing about tests, let's see another factor that might come up with the code review. Okay, so my reviewer understands the library better than I do. So what she tells me is that I could use something else instead of dispatch event. Because we're using fast, we could just use emit. And selection changed. Delete all this. It should work, hopefully. And it works. So again, it looks simple and small, but understand what I just did here. I replaced one API, one internal or one implementation detail with another, and the test made sure that I didn't break anything. Okay, it might be actually that, let's say that my custom event, my bubble was false, and then this would have failed. I would have replaced that dispatch event with emit, and this would have failed because the default of emit is bubble true. So this is one of the things that I really like about testing or TDD in general. Sorry, specifically, that it saves me while I refactor my code. And this could be my own understanding. A refactor that comes like 6 months later, or as I said, a code review remark. So yeah, so this is how I develop. And let's see if we can have another one. So yeah, so I wanted to see if the flag is sorry, we want to dispatch the event or emit only if the flag is single or multi. We don't want it to fire on every click, right? So what we want to do now is actually, let's go back here. So how do we do that? Okay, there is a thing with events, with JavaScript events, that if you you can stop them. Okay, if you're the first one to handle the event, you can stop them, and events, let's say kind of events cascades or whatever, are called propagation. Events propagate from the child to, actually it's a bit more complex because you have bubbling down and up, but you can stop the propagation. And if we capture, let's go back here. If we capture the event here in the capture the event here in the grid itself and stop the propagation, we can actually make our check. So let's go back here and write our test. So let's do this. What we'd expect now, and state is row, single, right? Or single row. Now I'm going to do this element action mode equals, actually that would be, okay, let's start with that, then we'll refactor. And let's await the update. Then we do this, and we'd expect it to fire. So this should pass, of course. Cool. But now let's say it should propagation. Selection change event when state is none. Okay. So update this. We know that state is none. And now we'd expect it to, let's say, I think it's calls count to do by calls. Okay, let's do okay. It expects by to have been called only like 0 times, which is like not have been called. Just not. I don't like to use the not in tests. So this should fail now, probably. Cool. And now we need to make sure all of them pass. Like, okay, this is, sorry. We can't actually make all of them pass, but let's move along with it. So I'll go back to data grid, and if I just do something like this, let's override the connected callback here and add this. Wow, that's pretty amazing. Okay. I don't want to stop propagation, and I'll show you why in a second. What I want to do is this. I want to do if this selection mode is none, then stop immediate propagation. That's true. That's okay. That's scary, actually, that Copilot reads my mind. But now it should work, I think. And if I return nothing, then it actually stops. So to fail. What does it want? Overload, add event listener. That is mighty strange. Why should it care? Let's try this. It works. What has a problem with this method? Anyone knows what the problem might be with this function? Hello, call it private. There is. Oh, I don't want custom event, sorry. Bye. What event do I want it to be? Let's see. Let me. Okay, let's just call it event should work. Sometimes TypeScript gives a lot of headaches, but it pays off eventually. Let's see what happens now. Okay, we have one failing, and this is actually this one. Okay, good. So this actually, I expected it to fail because this was the old API before I added this non-thingy. And what I want to make sure is that it also fires when I work. Now everything is working, and we have a working event listener. We ran out of time. Actually, we all ran out of time. My kids are going to burst into the room soon. But another refactor we can do is use this the data grid selection node dot multi-row, and do the same here with single. And with no need for doing anything here, and we're good to go. Okay. So it took a while. I also had to explain a few things, and I think I didn't mess up too much. The next thing I'd probably do is work as I did here. I'll need to do the remove event listeners. I'll need to browse with keyboard and space and all that stuff, but it's kind of similar. Like what I do is I'll write the test and then implement it, and I'll try to do it in as small steps as possible. I'm not afraid to change the tests if it just do, you know, like kind of was my exploration of how to use the click event and all that stuff. So I've written a test that was I knew beforehand it should fail at some point because it was not part of my spec. But this is kind of how you do exploration with TDD. And I think it's good practice because APIs might change, and you want to also keep that muscle working. Let's see, Stefan for refactoring. Stefan, I think do you mean like creating like a for loop for the tests with multiple? Yeah, okay. So Stefan mentioned creating like data-driven approach for the tests. I usually don't like that. I worked in a company that they built this kind of mechanism. We used to work with Karma and Jasmine, and they didn't have the each function. But it's a matter of preference. Some people like it. I prefer the simple way because I treat my tests as documentation. And once you start using all these fancy tricks, it starts to be a little bit less readable than just plain, this is the API, this is the use case, this is the use case, this is the use case, this is how, and in every use case, you see how things happen. Okay, let's go back here. So this is the use case. This is how it works. This is the use case. I set the selection mode, and I click and expect something. So it's pretty simple. Actually, this is kind of, you can say, arrangement phase. this is the action, and this is the assertion. So if you want to read more about it, I've just written a blog post about part of the blog post is about the AAA pattern, arrange, act, and assert. And actually that's my belief, and that's how I see tests that are also documentation for developers on how to use the API. But yeah, it's definitely doable to have an each statement. You could actually create a for loop that there is an it inside to make the code simpler. So what's in? Yeah, allow. Stefan, you're up, I think.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
The idea behind the data-driven approach is that if you have multiple inputs for the test, for example, you have some function that gets an input and you have an expected output, you can use these each to define for this input I expect this output, and this can be used to simplify and shorten the tests. But it really depends, as you said, how your test is structured. So for example, if you are calling your selection with different values like multiple, or single, and if it's always the same test, you can simplify it. And Jest has an integrated feature for it. So you do not need some shenanigans with doing for loops or something. You can just use the each. I posted the link in the chat. So this is a built-in feature you can use, and I usually use it if I have these kind of tests where you have multiple inputs and need to check if the application is working as expected.
Yeah, cool. So I might actually try it out because, as I said, I don't usually do that, but if the syntax keeps the simplicity of this, because what usually happened was that you'd get something like this, like imagine it's a template string and you get something like blah, blah. Then when you read the test itself, you get a lot of blah, blahs sometimes.
Yeah, I see your point. In Jest, you can have different approaches. You can use some table syntax, which you can use if you have multiple fields you want to check. For example, you have one input and one expected output, or you can use put in some array. So if you have multiple cases which result in the same results, you can also do it with the array, which should be, I think, simple to understand.
Okay, cool. But, I'll check it out, definitely.
Yes, and the second feedback I would like to give you is you're using the spy with to have been called times in line 65. I think this is a good idea, but in the rest of the test, it uses to have been called, which is I think a really thin test because you only check if the function has called, but you don't really check has it been called with the correct value, or has it been called one or multiple times. So I usually try to write it like this so it is clear, and if something is changed, you know, okay, something weird happened, it is called multiple times, but it shouldn't. This is really helpful when bug fixing.
Yeah. Thanks. I actually test that when I test the remove event listeners. So I remove the component, put it back in the DOM, and then I expect it to have been called only once.
Yeah, okay.
I remove them because the connected callback runs again when the element is connected. But yeah, that's good feedback. It might be even clearer to actually using the same syntax is better. Yeah, thank you. Ah, cool. Well, what happened? Huh. Yeah, cool.
Yes, I think Tally had the same feedback that you can use, for example, to have been called with, and to define what you expect as input for these functions.
Yeah, but these functions run. Yeah, they run with the native event. So
Yeah.
it's less important for me whether that's like an implementation detail of the browser or ECMAScript. So that's less relevant. But yeah, to have been called once or have been called ×1 would be better because I'm already using it here. So for the reader, it would be easier to say, okay, what happened?
And I think there was a question from Itamar for the how to test cross browsers at 11:46. I think this hasn't been answered yet. Maybe you can see.
That's a good question. I missed that. So we used to have Karma with Jasmine, and in this case, it's easy because Karma runs the real browsers, and we ran our unit tests 3 times. You can look at our former Vivid version 2, which uses it. We actually went deeper with that because we needed support for Safari 13, for instance, and we couldn't find anything, any machine with it. So we worked with Browser Stack back then, but then we worked really hard to remove our support for Safari 13. So we didn't need that anymore. But now we're using Playwright for cross-browser compatibility. We also have UI tests in addition to these. Unit tests are usually logic, so it's kind of cross-browser-ish, maybe except form association, which used to work differently on Safari and probably IE, old IEs. But now the problem is mostly fonts and styles and how the browser renders things. So Playwright is the more cost-effective for us when we want to test cross-browser. So we test the 3 browsers in Playwright, and our unit tests run in JSDOM really fast. That's for logic. Hope it makes sense. Yeah, Talia, I said Playwright, so you're probably excited.
Yeah, I also use Playwright for some tests, so I know it is a very good framework to do. But what I notice, it sometimes has some issues with Firefox if you do some visual regression testing, because if there is some minimal 1 pixel difference, then the test will fail. And this sometimes happens if you apply some Firefox update, but I think it's gotten better a bit, but it still happens.
That's why we work with the Docker test. We run the tests in a Docker in a specific Playwright and browser versions, and when we just update once when it works, and then it's more stable. We can run it locally to just test it in our, let's say, dynamic browsers or different versions of browsers. But for our CI, we want it to be, like, we don't want to fail for 1 pixel or whatever. We want to make sure it's okay.
I totally agree.
Since you mentioned the Playwright, I don't know if you use in Vivid Shadow DOM.
Yes, we do, definitely.
Okay, so right now Playwright is like the only solution that can take it right. Cypress has a very lousy solution, I would say. Working with Shadow DOM is problematic. This is how I got to Playwright. Yeah,
so that's great, and yeah, I'm really enjoying Playwright's how Playwright plays with web components. It's great. I enjoy Playwright because it doesn't have a UI like like Cypress. It feels more professional without this UI. But it was actually much faster. I don't know.
Yeah, it's faster, but also just for the exercise of it, you might want to try with the Shadow DOM on Cypress, and then you will have to do something really useful with all the anger that you have.
Yeah, frustration is the best way to.
Yeah, exactly. The frustration.
To learn something.
Yeah. So yeah, if anyone is listening, I don't know, and uses web components, then definitely Playwright is a solution.
Yeah, it's working great for us. We really enjoy it.
You don't run it locally because of the snapshots, right?
We actually run it locally, but also we can run it locally in Docker or without Docker.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Every time we want to upgrade Playwright, we actually need to update the snapshots because every version of browser renders fonts differently. It's funny. But,
that's weird. We didn't really encounter it, so it's weird.
Yeah, I also noticed that, but I think this is something Firefox related because I applied the update, and for Chromium I didn't have this problem, and I think what was it, WebKit or something, or WebKit or something. The third thing also worked, but for Firefox it just
Firefox
every time it fails.
Yeah, definitely. That's why we're using Docker to stabilize the test. So we'll have a working.
How do you manage the snapshots? You just commit them to the repo?
Yeah, there they are. That's in the combo box, which is a bit more. That's the one. Snapshots.
And
great.
And so when you have so if there are expected changes, you run them locally on CI and do the commit, or the CI does the commit?
Yeah. No, we run it locally and then we commit. We want to make sure. Let me show you. I think I have it here. Docs, Y-test.
And it doesn't have issues with merging, like it doesn't show conflicts or.
No, because we run the update in a Docker and then the snapshot.
Yeah, we just update. And then when you merge the branch, it just became the new golden image.
Yeah, definitely. So it's like changing behavior, changing the looks. So because it's not a real API, it's just how it looks. So it's not a major version, but usually it's when we add a feature and we add just another more example to the snapshot. That's most of our changes. So it's just like adding another test in the.
It's not really the final UI, because eventually the consumer will customize it.
Yeah, but we want to make sure that.
I understand. It's good.
We actually test the documentation itself, because what we do in the test is, I think I have it here. So we extract the HTML block from the README. So we don't do it all the time. Sometimes we don't do it, but the out-of-the-box definition of our tests is just to extract everything from the README, and the README covers all the examples. So we have like a UI test like this just by creating the documentation. I think it's really cool. Saved us a lot, actually, a few times from going to production with some really, really stupid and embarrassing mistake.
I have another question on this.
I'll show.
What do you run the Playwright against?
What do you mean?
What runs in the browser when you run the test?
We just write HTML for most of the time. It's just HTML. Sometimes it's with JavaScript if we want to test behavior.
But what, it's like wrapping the component, or?
No, we have a documentation. So in our documentation, we have a few, because it's web components, it works with the attributes, right? So all we need to do is extract the HTML, put it in a page.
Okay, I see.
And just serve it to Playwright. And takes it from there. I don't remember. If
I'm not that deep into web components, but you need to import the component, right?
Yeah,
Something like import VMC combo box before you can use it in HTML, right?
Yeah, so it happens here. Yeah.
Ah, okay.
It works.
No, but also you need to do the define the custom element registry define. No.
It happens here. Let me show you. Yeah, we created some utilities for it. So we have a load component, and then we load the template.
So this is your equivalent of the mount. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this one actually is an example of this is an example of something that we did. No, it's the same. Use the extract. I don't remember. There was one component we didn't use the extract, but eventually we just create a template, which is a string, and then we load it into an HTML page, and that's it. That's kind of it. Load components does the whole, just add the script of the needed component and its styles, and yeah, just for the developer, it's like a no-brainer. It's like
yeah, it's the equivalent of what Playwright are doing with the mount fixture, which, by the way, you can put it as a fixture. If you, for the Playwright test, you can use a fixture and put that information, and it will be even easier and nicer.
Yeah, actually we could. Just didn't know enough Playwright when I wrote this code.
Yeah, but it's pretty easy to move it into a fixture and pass the parameters or whatever. That's really cool.
It's actually good. Yeah, just
I like that.
the dev task. It's actually interesting.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for being here. I had fun. Hope you did as well. Okay, so see you later. Cheers.
Before you finish, a short message to the chat. If you like the room, please feel free to leave a like. Near the join speaker button, there is thumbs up button. So usually the host appreciates it if you like the room, and you can also like the speaker in the speaker tab. So this is some small feedback and appreciation for the host and the streamer.
Oh, thanks.
And have a nice Sunday, guys.
Cheers. Have a nice